You're going to the town office.
Another meeting.
Make cookies.
Greg's like, you better be there. I was like, I will. Don't worry.
Put a few drops of vanilla in the oven and heat it up. The whole place will smell like vanilla.
Maybe you're gonna do I not. Right, are you? Good. A lot of socks. Have you guys ever been in here before? No. Oh, it's fantastic. If you want chocolates out here.
Yeah.
You guys want some coffee and donuts?
Bring me a minute.
Um,
Considering I just had coffee and donut.
yeah, it'd be great off. Yeah, and when I got in real estate, it makes sense, this location.
Wow.
Your cash, not be donuts, you gotta do.
Brennan, you want me to hook up my computer?
Yeah.
Yeah, leave her Morgan, she was setting up a good. With lucky blondes, you know.
Sweet.
That's the downside of being a gateway, you get painted all over.
You want me to just email that presentation?
What have we got?
She's got a good look for you. Hi, how are you?
Bye, how are you?
Good, how are you? Hello?
First, I just.
She's got Zoom up on here.
Oh, cool, I just. Two.
Okay.
We're
Right there,
gonna do
right there.
email it first, get it set up really quick.
You'll leave in with Wi-Fi password.
Dave, you're doing a great job, thank you.
Yes.
Everyone, which one is it? I wonder, are we in training room A, B?
A, I think,
Yes.
thank you, Dave.
Don't listen to your drunk monkey, I like that.
Always pick a name for the day or the week.
That's great. We are on, and then you said there's gonna be a Zoom.
Yes, yes, so she's got Zoom set up already.
Email her the.
If you want to email it to, was it front desk?
Friend, nobody.
1070 at KW.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody actually uses Google
Google.
presentations, so.
Well. Send it to us a PDF out there.
I don't know how to download it as a PDF.
Oh my
I don't use
goodness.
Google presentations.
You want this, these, you guys office?
Yeah.
Let's see,
Oh, right there.
Microsoft PowerPoint. That work?
No, it's not gonna work because the slides are gonna be different sizes. Download it as a PDF.
Send it to both of them, send her both of them.
So are you officially like all kids in school?
No,
Okay. You're like, no.
You got one straggler.
Declan is, well, he's in, the YMCA Sand Center at a
Okay.
daycare, so.
Just send her all both files.
I have to walk by and I'm like,
There's no one on Zoom, I'm just using it for recording
Okay.
purposes, so if somebody asks for it
So
later.
it's on record.
I'm
Oh,
gonna go back through like you said.
You said this, it's,
Okay, that's all right.
There you go.
Say status job.
I know, okay, well, hold on with it.
So we have Marks Engineering here today to talk to you a little bit about some of their services. I'm very familiar with Brennan and Stephanie, but also very familiar with some of the services that they provide, and I thought it'd be an awesome opportunity to come in and allow for them to kind of talk a lot about what they're doing and how it can help our clients.
Yeah, Brennan Marks, my wife Stephanie Marks, we're a small company here in Canada, there's about 11 of us, 12 of us maybe here now. We got a couple part-timers, but we have 5 surveyors on the staff, we've got 4 designer engineers on staff. We got some admins and landscape architects, so We're right on Main, we're right on 5 and 20, right across from the Lowe's Plaza there, if you see that big white house that we kind of redid a little bit, so that's our home. Yeah, we don't have a big, we don't have a big sign out, but we don't necessarily need to, because you get a lot of word of mouth clients, so. So today I just wanted to cover a few things with you, basically what we do, give you guys some input on the engineering and surveying life. I'm gonna be very technical, and I apologize, I'll try to simplify it. My wife will be able to catch me and say, what does that mean? So, and feel free to stop me, so. Subdivisions is a big part of what we do. Talk about some economics. We've got some example projects we've done in Victor recently. And I can go over some figures and kind of tell you what we had to do to get there. Septic systems probably is a big part of what you do, and everyone has a problem with septic systems, whether it's working or not. Land surveys, different types of land surveys that we do. We do a lot of site plans also for single family residential, also commercial and subdivisions. Talk about a little bit about timing and you guys' contingencies that you put in the contracts, what you might want to word it, how you might want to word it, and kind of how much time you might want to give yourself to do those. And we might talk a little bit about a couple of our projects too, use it for example. So subdivision and site selection, some of the things we look for when we're talking to clients or our clients, which are maybe your clients that are buying a piece of property and they're looking to build, whether it's a brand new home for themselves, their family, or it's a commercial site for their new business or a business. And some of the things that we're talking about, we look at, one of the big things is wetlands. There's the state and the federal government has put out maps for wetlands. So we see them a lot on Encore. If you're looking on Encore, looking for information, you kind of turn on that layer, it says wetland layers, but the problem is they haven't mapped everything. And we come across a lot of sites where there's not mapped wetlands or known wetlands. And they say, we want to put a house here. We can't, it's a wetland. Well, this never was not on the map, but this doesn't matter, it's still a wetland. So it's like, it's a huge red flag because it could mean you can't do anything with the property. So you just bought a piece of property, it's a dead property. So that's a big problem. Soils.
Hold on, I have a question, sorry. What is a wetland and how can you tell when you look at the
So,
site?
yeah, so a wetland is part of the property or part of land that has been inundated with water for at least 4 to 6 months a year. Maybe dry when you walk, especially this time of year when you walk out, it may be completely dry, but it'll still have the wetland species. So cattails, big sign. You see cattails, that's like automatic, ding, 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 ding. So it has to have 3 components though. It has to have the vegetation and it has to have the soils. And I'll show some slides of some soils that we've recently discovered that, and then also it has to have the wildlife. Right, which is easy, like white-tailed deers. You got any question?
Well, so I was gonna ask you, so like great question, because if you're walking land, which we often do, right? How do you know when it's been 90 degrees and we haven't seen rain in like a month or two?
Yeah.
Like what are other things besides cattails that we can look for to maybe have some indication of it could be potentially wetlands?
That's a really good question. So it's easy to tell if you're looking at, if you know what the species of plants and vegetation this time of year. But it's hard to tell if there's no, water or cattails. Encore's not gonna tell you. That's the problem. It does, yeah, but it misses a whole lot of
Okay, so
wetlands.
it does sometimes, but.
Yeah, so
Got it.
big thing actually you can see is if you look at the bottom of the tree, if you see a moss layer around the bottom of the tree, that's usually a good indicator for like that water, because moss needs water, obviously. So that's like, oh, hey, that might be, or if it's not growing this time of year. And it just looks like, mud kind of sprinkled through the forest. That's probably because there's too much water there, it can't grow. So there's too much water there the other times of the year that it can't grow. So that's like kind of like, and then the soils, and you're only gonna tell the soils until you dig a hole.
So say I walk out there and I'm like, maybe, that's when I call you.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like brand new, so I'm gonna ask you a lot of weird
No,
questions.
bring it on.
Okay.
That's like I said, I'm gonna be very technical about it, so feel free to dumb me down. So that kind of brings us to the next thing is soils. Everything we do is depending on what kind of soils you have. I mean, I've been to sites where you've hit bedrock, which is a hard layer, a foot down. So like you can't really build a basement. It'll be hard for you to build a basement. It's gonna be, you can't put a septic system in it. You know, in order to break up the bedrock, we need to blow it up with dynamite or come through a jackhammer and out with a big enough piece of equipment. So that's one thing we've always run into is soil, is bedrock. Soils is you got wetland soils or you've got hydric soils. I'll explain those in a second. And you've got like heavy clays that just won't perk. So a lot of it, soils has a lot to do with it. In order to tell what the soils are, they do have soil maps. We can help you read those. But the telltale way to do it is actually dig a hole. So, archaeological kind of relates, is more for the commercial side of things, but we do have Indian burial sites. We do have Indian villages and artifacts that are found in the area. We have one site on 5 and 20, which is just next to the tombstone place there. It's just before Geenan Road there, just before the steam pageant. There's a site there that's gonna be never built on. Because we were going through a commercial site plan on it. We submitted it to because we have to submit most all commercial plans to the state historic preservation office. We sent it in there. The head of the office called me on my cell phone, on his cell phone. He said, that's a known Indian burial site. He says, so if you would need to do anything there, we have to have the Seneca Indians come in and claim anything that's there.
How often do you come across that?
And that'll never happen.
Yeah.
That's just like done.
Yeah.
We run into archaeological a lot on commercial builds and subdivisions. You know, they don't really get involved in single family. They kind of let every single family go through. So they're more interested in the big fish. So it could be if you're doing commercial or you're doing a larger subdivision, you could get dinged on archaeological. We have done, there's a company out of Rochester that archaeologists that come and they dig our sites. It's about $3,000 to $4,000 for a 10-acre site. Most of the time they find nothing. So I can say that most of the projects we've had, they found nothing. They're really good at what they do. The one that we as a known Indian burial site, we didn't get to an archaeological thing. We just left it. Kind of was like that disclosure thing. Now, if he knows it, if he's got a paperwork, he's got to disclose it, but it's been all hearsay now, so.
If somebody's got property that they're looking to buy and build on, is this something that like? They come to you before they even buy the place and be like, hey, come check this out, make sure this is legal before I buy it?
It's a good idea. I mean, and we're open for phone calls too. A lot of times we're looking things on desktop and just like, you know, sorting through a lot of stuff that we
Just
know in
something,
there.
there's so many things that could go wrong.
There is a lot
That
of
like, I
things.
just wanna know all that before.
And that's where you would write in some sort of a contingency for a perk test, engineer's inspection, things like
Okay,
that.
so you kind of lock it in, but it's a contingency that happens.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, it's like a home inspection, but done on land.
Got it, okay.
I've come across some sites and that's kind of the reason why I was like, yeah, let's go talk to the realtors. Because I've come across some sites like we want to build a house on this property we just bought. They own it and we're like, you can't, it's really hard to, and then they're like, oh, you know, so. And then they gotta put it back on the market and it's just a mess, but. Around the Finger Lakes steep slopes, they're workable, but they are more permitting process to the town. The town is really has a lot of requirements of what you can do on steep slopes. So steep slope is anything that's like a 15%, so you'd actually think about it's pretty flat. So if you were to take a line from my hand to the end of that table, that's slope, that's a steep slope. Anything above that is a steep slope. It's a really high criteria. So they have different slope zones, so if you go up higher slopes, like something that's more vertical, there's a lot more requirements. So that's relatively flat, they call it 15% slope. That is, there's a lot of, you can do a lot, and you just have to get a permit, not a big deal. Steeper slopes, they say like, no garages is like really steep slopes, or there's a lot of things like, you can't do a steep slope, so we gotta kind of work through that.
So if we have a client who's looking to build a property, we're gonna send them to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's where I'm going, that's
Right.
It
And I
sounds
can
like
do
you're
an
gonna
hour, I
cover
can
all
do-
the bases for me.
I can do it, 15-20 minute call, and I usually don't charge, just kind of like, but I do wanna go through these things and like, kind of like, this is what we
Oh,
look
this
at.
is great.
So, I threw water frontage on here because those are usually big ticket properties, right? And there's the UDML, right? So it's Uniform Docking and Mooring Law that they have around Canandaigua Lake. And They have a version of it, Cuca, Seneca, they're all like have their own version of it, basically says what you can have for a dock.
Uniform docking and
Mooring law,
mooring,
you know,
MOOR.
like as in mooring a boat.
Okay.
Yeah, so they basically tell you how big of a dock you can have if you, for a certain number of frontage you have. The only reason I brought it up is it gets weird with the property lines. You can build so close to your property line, but the property lines are not just straight out. And we've come across a couple lots that have low front, very little frontage to the dock, the property lines are like this. And actually, like, they allow your dock to kind of extend those lines out in that zone, so, and say the waterfront's here. There's kind of a couple properties you come across, they're like, yeah, you can't have a dock. So it's like, they're like, what? So that's a big deal, I don't, so that's why I brought it up, or you can't have the dock you want, or you can't have 5 docks in a boathouse. So that's some of the things like, especially some of these really expensive properties, $1 million properties plus, you know, they're buying to put a mansion on it. And then they can't have the dock they want with the boathouse they want on it, and that's like a huge problem for some of these, some more wealthy individuals, so. We have to talk them off the ledge for the most part. Commercial sites deal and commercial sites in New York State DOT, so we deal with the 5 and 20 corridor a lot. And putting entrances on it, it's not a big deal, although just plan for a lot of time for the DOT, so they just go back and forth. For instance, our property, across from Lowe's Plaza, it's a 4-acre parcel. I've got a plan for 63 apartment units. That office building's not gonna be there in 10 years, hopefully. But the DOT is making me repave out the entire median and restripe out 5 and 20 for 200 feet in front of my property. So that's a $300,000 investment. I gotta put it into the state highway. That is my money. Well, someone's money, but so that kind of be a showstopper. Like the DOT could be like, no, you have to do it this way, and you gotta put $500,000 into their state highway system that they use. A lot of commercial sites don't figure in, but so DOT can be a real pain in the butt. I'd say commercial water supply. This one here is a campground we did down in Naples. It was under contract for a while, but fell apart. This is like 150 to 200 RV sites. Problem is it didn't have water, so they would have to pull out of wells. In order to pull out of a well for that much water, and then you have to treat it to the state health department standards. So there's a lot of treatment that needs to go into it, and it needs a lot of water. It doesn't have water, got backed out because of it.
Any idea if they, just out of curiosity, if they were able to move forward with it, what it would cost to run water into that?
And that's what we're looking at, bringing up from a mile down the road. So utilities, I won't be on this, no. Water is about $55 a linear foot. Sewer is about 100 to $250 a square linear foot to run utilities down the road. So if you were to some quick math, if you were to run a mile of water line, you're looking at $250,000.
Holy moly.
So yeah, it adds up quick, and that's your money. And even though it's a public, you give it to the town, you're done. You pay for it if you want it, because the towns are gonna
I
pay.
guess it's an investment because then you can have your part, but dang, I don't know if it's that good of an.
Well, these campgrounds are cash cows too, but yeah, it's, well, you're working with the municipality in the right of way.
It's nuts.
It's not easy. One of the big things we've had come up lately was RG&E and NYSEC. There's been some subdivisions we've worked on, actually, that we know of that we're this kind of attached to, but not really much. Is they're an RG&E and NYSEC says we don't have enough electricity in the grid for your houses, even though you bought your lot, you're already building your house, because that's usually not a condition of the building permit. So they got the foundation going up, and then they're calling for a connection to RG&E. They said we don't have enough power in the grid to power your house, or we don't have enough gas in the main to give you gas. And gas has been a contention for a long time with the regulations, but there's a lot of right there, pathway apartments, all that stuff, they're dealing with that right now. They don't have enough gas. There's other ones in that area, they don't have enough power. So like, and now you have to go to the PSC, the Public Service Commission, you have to sue RG&E and NYSEC to them to give you gas or power.
So whose fault is that though? Would you, is it
It
the
would be the
developers?
But dealing with RG and NYSEG is impossible to get a definitive answer out of them. Maybe this year they say, well, yeah,
I mean,
what
it's
happened?
impossible to get clients to switch over their utility services half the time, so.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right,
Well,
yeah, so I'm not surprised, but it's interesting.
if you come into a big project, for instance, this campground this was another big one with power. He had to bring power a half mile up for this, and that was gonna cost him a lot of
Where
money.
is that? I'm just curious.
If you go out of 21 south out of Naples on the right, you won't miss those big drumlins.
I grew up on 21 South, so that's why I was wondering. That's
Those
what I
big
thought.
drumlins, yeah, that's
I
the
know
plan.
exactly what you're talking
He's
about.
got hobbit holes and he had all kinds of stuff on there. It's like a really cool property. We were totally invested in it, but just the cost of getting utility
Yes.
service. But
Love the area, but.
yeah, so, but NYSEG and RG, they're terrible. And if you have a big project, even a big house that you know someone's gonna build on it, make sure it's called due diligence. You obviously know what that word means, those words mean, but due diligence. Part of that step is to get what you call will serve letters. So from each facility, or each utility, whether it's power, gas, sewer, water, spectrum. You get a letter from those companies that says, we will serve your development. And that way that's usable in court if you had to go that far. So that's one thing we look at with site selection. Obviously, there's a threshold where you try to do that due diligence where you're getting those world serve letters. I'm gonna do it for every house because the chances are good that you're gonna get utilities need or you're gonna know which valve. I just want to go over a couple of projects we did in Victor. This one's on Coiler Crossing Road in Victor. It's very, if you're familiar with the neighborhood, these houses are all beautiful $1 million assessed houses. This is a 13-acre parcel. It was bought and was subdivided into 6 lots, no infrastructure as far as no roads, no sewer, no water, expansions or new facilities. Basically just building the houses. We did find wetlands here. They were not mapped. They kind of twisted around our plans for the development. We have to, so New York State Realty subdivision. So if you're doing a subdivision and you have 5 or more lots, there's a likely chance that you have to send it to the state health department for review before you can actually finalize the subdivision. And anytime you send anything to the health department, plan on 6 to 12 months before you get heard back from them. So it obviously was bought without conditions that the Department of Health approved it. And a lot of times when you're developing property like this, you go in with that, you just speculate. So you're luckily, for the most part, I'll get into permitting later, but so there's found wetlands here. They were not classified, but we had to avoid them. Town of Victor, like town zoning was, I could spend like 20 hours on different towns, what their quirks are, but town of Victor, they require us to take 50% of the land and set it aside and do a conservation easement, so nothing will ever be touched on it. So 13 acres became 6.5 acres real quick, through the approval. So there's town development requirements, that tell you what you can and can't do with the land if you're gonna subdivide. So this place, everything that's here looks like forested. That's all gonna be basically for forever wild. DEC, we had to get a DEC permit. That was relatively easy. But the biggest thing with this development was purchased for $385,000. By the time all 6 lots sold for about $150,000 a piece, it turned around with $800,000 to $900,000 return. So it's like your economics for these type of projects is you want to double your money. Because by the time you give all it to the IRS, you do all your fees, commissions, you end up with hopefully a 50% return on investment, sometimes more. So that's if you get someone like interested in buying land to subdivide it, kind of think about your economics, like you want to double your money. If you don't, it's still worth it, but you risk. Yeah, it's the risk you gotta, it's high risk.
So on average, like taking this, like what was your cost? What is the cost going out of pocket to even get it to this point?
To get it, it's really
Like when these properties sold, like without the selling part of it, like what are the back end costs that went into it?
we put $25,000 in engineering into this. We put probably another $10,000 in other sub consultants. So we had 35 into it. So that put us at like a little over 425, I think it was total into it. with the purchase price. And we, luckily we were able to bring out, 800,000.
Did you bring utilities in? Like,
No.
did you provide that stuff or you let that on?
Yeah, these are the unicorn properties that we look for.
Yeah.
But, I mean, but in order to do it, you really wanna look to double your money, because like I said, by the time you give it all to the IRS and you take the risk, I mean, you pay taxes for a year.
Yeah.
Luckily, these ones were purchased and they were sold in the same year. I think luckily, but unluckily because capital gains, but, they, because if you hold them for 2-3 years, the taxes kill you. Because by the time you take one 13-acre lot, which was assessed at $130,000, you subdivide it to 6, now you got 6 lots that they could assess at $100,000. So your assessment went from $130,000 to $600,000. And so your $600,000 taxes are gonna be obviously 4 or 5 times more than what they are now. So you're, instead of paying $10,000 a year in taxes, you're paying 60 to 70. So you have to get rid of them quick. Or else the taxes will eat you alive. Luckily, Victor is a thriving market, as you probably know, and there's no more houses left to be sold. So they're buying land.
Building is the way.
Yeah, so,
Hey, I would skip the next one and move on to a couple more slides, just in essence of time.
yeah, I'll come back to Valentine, that was another similar. Septic systems, let's see if I can get them all on here at one screen. There's 2 types of septic systems, there's conventional and then there's alternative. Conventional is like this one down here, you dig a trench, you put a pipe in it, you backfill it. And you've got a distribution box, which is this one, you've got a septic tank, pretty straightforward, in ground. You're talking $15,000 to put a system in a new system.
You said that's conventional, right? Like your standard.
Yeah, $15,000 about what they're at right now, it could be 20 if it's a complicated site.
Is that based off of like a standard, like 3-bedroom house or one that got
3-bedroom house,
that,
yeah.
something like that?
Yeah, as long as you get a perk rate, you wanna get a perk rate less than 60 minutes. If you go over 60 minutes, you're going to alternative, less than 60 minutes, 60 minutes per inch, so basically it's very scientific, you got a nail with 2, or you got a stick with 2 nails on it. You dig a hole, about like this, 2 feet deep, put the stick in there, you time how far it goes down from the top nail to the bottom nail, you do that 4 times. And that's either by the time you get to the 4th time, that's usually your perk rate. So that perk rate has to be less than 60 minutes for it to be a conventional system. If it goes over, it's an alternative system. Now there is.
Too many of your tricks, or we'll be doing it ourselves.
You're more than welcome. I encourage people call me all the time, like, what do I need to do for a septic system? It's like, well, do a perk test. Here's a sheet. This is how you do it. But you're welcome. We're happy to do it.
I would say, in this area, there's a lot of protected watersheds, so anytime you're within a certain distance of the lake.
Yeah.
Which they have maps of that you can look online, that you have to have a watershed inspector present when you're doing the deep hole test, which
That's
is
what-
not a required test.
Because if we're designing it, we'll talk to the watershed for you and all that stuff. The big thing is that one of the things you guys, one of the realtors always expect is we want a perk test. Well, perk test only tells you half the story. There's a deep hole test, and which is like this one here that we recently did on Eddy Road. This was, you have to dig that with a backhoe or excavator. And you have to do a deep hole because you have to determine where the groundwater level is. You can't find it in a regular post hole that you're doing perk tests with. Because the groundwater, in this case, is about a foot down from the surface. And you see all this white, and if you see white in the soils, you start ding, 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 this is the problem. So this is the groundwater will come up to within 12 inches of the surface here on this particular hole, every year. So the groundwater is gonna be 1 foot down, it's seasonally, obviously, this time it's dry because it's summer. But every year it's gonna come up to within 12 inches of the surface, and that's gonna reside. But the state says you have to have 2 feet between the bottom of your leach field and that groundwater, so you end up hauling in all this material. In this case, it would be an alternative system. Alternative systems, I can spend a lot of time on it, but most typically is a raised bed. You see them, you drive around, you see like, oh, it's got a raised mound in its front yard, anyway, you can see with the naked eye. And those are $30,000-$40,000 systems.
Are those pretty standard, or are there gonna be other systems that are gonna come into play that are gonna take those out?
there is other systems that come into play that can replace a raised bed, but they're all priced competitively.
Okay, alright,
So the big thing we can do with other technologies, and I won't even get into it, is we can shrink the size of that bed. And so that mostly comes into like really tight sites or steep slopes that we have to like kind of shrink things down.
Lake sites.
Lakeside, so for instance, this one here, well, if you can, some way off to the right here is the lake, and we're about 120 feet up and the house is on the lake. This is a really steep slope. We've got a 7 foot tall retaining wall that they've built up, and they're gonna put the leach field. That's $100,000 septic system. So it'll add up quick, especially the more complicated. And we've used those alternative technologies to shrink it down to the septic system is about the size of this room, a little smaller. So we can do it, it's just a lot more money goes into it. This is, like I said, this is a hydric soil, so talking about the wetlands and soils and stuff, like what is a wetland? So this really dark peat material, that's a wetland, that's the bottom of the wetlands, organics build up over time. And like I said, this white sand is sand that's been bleached out because the water is oxidized. Basically, you pour bleach on a piece of paper or on a t-shirt, it turns white. Well, the water and the minerals in the water will kind of do the same thing to the soil over time. So it's all bleached out, it's all oxidized out. So we know that right here, this is a terrible for septic system, but also we know that this is indicating a wetland. Even though this was pretty much a fallow mowed field. But it shows that they could be considered a wetland and then go back to, we can't do anything with it, so.
I will say, we do probably 200 to 300 septic system designs a year, so if something does come up where they're worried about the system or, they need a new system, we do a lot of them, and I jokingly call Brennan and the guy who does our septic system designs the kings of poop, because they know everything about septic systems,
She
so.
put it on it, she put it on a coffee mug for us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great, but no,
me too.
yeah, right. These guys are super knowledgeable about septic systems, and I would say we probably have the market pretty much cornered on septic systems. And I think one thing that sets us apart is there are other engineers out there that can design things cheaper, which is great if you have, if you only wanna spend $1,000 for a plan, but then you have to install a $40,000 septic system.
Yeah,
So it's really important for people to understand, buyers particularly to understand that even though you may feel like you're spending a lot of money in engineers, it's going to save you so much money in the long run to have it done correctly and to design a conventional system instead of a $40,000 system.
There's a lot of guys that go right to, like I said, those alternative practice.
Yeah.
They just like kind of cookie cutter, they know it's gonna work. It's kind of like belts and suspender, they just kind of drop it on every site, but they're $30,000 to $40,000 a system, so. Cost, engineering design from us is about 1,500 to 2,000. That $500 jump is if we gotta use our backhoe to dig the hole. If we don't, it's 1,500, that's a conventional system. If it goes over that, it can go, or if we have to dig the holes, 2,000. Timing, we can usually get a conventional system, turn right back around in a month, one time. Oh,
Oh, you're fine. Not you.
and like my wife mentioned, is the approvals is, if you've got a watershed, they usually take a little bit longer. If there's not a watershed, it's usually just go out to pretty close, week turnaround on your permits, so you get a septic system in. If you're lucky, you get a septic system in a month and a half.
There's also the Department of Health, if you have an alternative system.
That you're 6 to 12 months, Department of Health, 6 to 12 months, just put that right on the schedule. So before they even get back to you.
Yeah, and that's if you have an alternative system.
And then there's only 2 engineers in the GM office, one is retiring very soon, so it's gonna probably be a year plus before we hear back from them.
And that's for like new systems, right? Like in raw land
yes.
or?
Replacement systems, you gotta wait, you've got a lot of leniency with.
Okay. I was just gonna ask you about that. So if you have clients that we know the septic is older or there's issues, we can call you and.
Yeah, the replacement systems usually we can get permitted and turned around. We usually try to get, especially for family, we try to get those done in like a month or
I had my
less.
sale like 10 years ago,
Yeah,
11 years ago, and I was like, we didn't need to fix it fast.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Okay, so any questions on the subjects?
One item of note, we like to do perk tests during the months
Oh,
of
yeah.
May through October.
No, Memorial Day to Thanksgiving. Don't do it all of that. I mean, you could put it in your deal, but. If we do a perk test in, or. We do a perk test in December, January, it's a good chance to fail.
Yeah.
So we probably, at that point, if we had to do it, we'd give you the benefit of the doubt, we mostly would base it on the people.
So my question then is, let's say we have somebody, and I think I feel like I did this to you actually, because I think I had somebody buy land winter time,
Yeah,
and they went out and you did a perk test for them,
yeah,
Bristol area.
yeah,
Can you just look at, like, could I call you and say, hey, Brennan, listen, we've got this person who wants this land, clearly we're gonna need a perk test. Can you give us an idea of knowing the area, what type of system, and could you do that, give us a ballpark, that way we don't have to write it in if we don't want to?
yeah, I really would just, the biggest thing is to do the deep hole, I wouldn't even wanna do perk tests. But do the deep hole excavation, and like, so Vermont, no perk test is required. They need to do a deep hole test, and they need to tell, you need to classify the soils in the hole. You
So
don't even need,
alternative to perk
everything
test
is
is just
based-
doing a deep hole.
yes, write it into your, both of them into your contracts, that way you can. Pick one you're gonna do, which one you're gonna do, but
What's the cost of that roughly?
a deep hole,
Yeah.
so perk test and deep hole is about $500.
So either one.
We usually try to do both at the same time, if we gotta bring in our backhoe, that adds another $400 or $500, so. Could be 500 to 1,000, if they have their own backhoe, you know, they save some $500.
Okay. Just
So-
asking because deep hole doesn't sound like a shallow hole, so.
No, it's
It
four.
sounds like it would be expensive.
It's a good question, it's 4 foot deep, so it's about that deep. And then we've got to be able to get down into it, so it's like 4 feet wide by 4 feet long. I've had guys that they're like, oh, we'll just dig it by hand, we'll do it for you, I'm like, okay.
Get on that.
Let me know how that works out. Yeah.
So
okay.
the easiest way to do is bring in a backhoe, and honestly, when we're looking, especially at raw land, we're looking. We might dig a deep hole here in this, say this spot of the land, and it could be crap, we could go to the other side of the property and dig it, and it'll be good. We've done that all the time, soils change a lot through sites, especially bigger sites, so
So really what you're saying is that when we're talking to our clients about
really perk
That
test
is-
and deep hole,
perk test, or really just saying do a deep hole, because that's gonna
Yeah,
be your
yeah.
most
that's gonna
accurate.
tell you.
So deep hole will kind of cover
Yeah.
everything, perk test is just what we're familiar with saying, is that?
I don't know, I just kinda got written into that's what we do, but every time someone calls me, like the real estate deal, they said. We need a perk test, I just know what they need, I'm like, yeah, we're gonna bring it back, go out,
Yeah.
so. I usually, like, even the watershed, they're like, we don't wanna see the perk test, we just wanna see what your deep hole test, they don't care about. Because we could, everyone that's been doing it long enough can look into a deep hole and say that's the perk rate. So it's, like I said, Vermont doesn't even require it anymore, but. Any more questions on deep hole and perk test?
No, but.
You should, everyone should experience, it's great.
Well, let us know when you're gonna do a deep hole. We all have to right now, we'll bring people.
You know, that's and a deep hole.
I don't know, like, do like a Saturday afternoon or.
I can't wait, Emily.
Like early evening drinks and deep hole.
It's like a deep hole.
Yeah.
You know?
I won't elaborate on this because I'm getting great feedback here. So this hole right here, if I did a perk test in it, it would pass with flying colors because about 24 inches down, you're ready to sand. And it's dry as, it would pass with flying colors. We'd have like, it could do a system would be small, it'd be good. But if you didn't dig the deep hole, you wouldn't know that that's hydric soil and that it's going to be flooded half the year, so.
And your system is gonna fail.
And your system's gonna fail when it floods. So, that's like, perk test would have been great there, you would, they would have bought the land and been screwed. So, land surveys is also something we do a lot of, there's three main types of surveys that we deal with. Instrument survey, that's closing the property, needs search and abstract. Just shows the property boundaries and any structures on it and anything that the abstract might outline, like easements or encumbrances that are mappable. Topographic is the next tier, like, well, is in addition to the instrument, we go through and we shoot elevation contours. I'm sure everyone's probably seen a topographic map before. But if you're in a deal where someone's buying around land and then you know they're gonna build on it. Have them do a topographic survey as well as the instrument survey for the closing. Because it's gonna take one surveyor one day to do or probably 3/4 of the day to do the instrument map. And it's gonna take the surveyor another quarter of the day to do the topographic part of it. If you do the instrument, you close, then you get another day to do the topographics. It's like they're all set up, you might as well do it all at once. And get it in a CAD format, so us engineers use CAD. And a PDF, so like, what a regular deal, because they're already surveying it for the seller survey, might as well say we want a topographic survey. Also, because we know we're gonna build on it, save you some money on the seller on the other end.
What does it typically cost to do both of them?
So if it, like a standard, I would say. Well, yeah, go ahead.
I will say it always depends, because if I didn't say that, my surveyors would be very angry with me.
Of course.
But if it's a small lot residential, it's probably gonna be about $785. If you have anything
Instrument.
that's, yep, for an instrument survey, if you have anything that's greater than 5 acres, it's gonna go up. And then topographic is gonna run you probably 1,800 to 2,500.
On
Because
bigger
you're shooting,
sites, yeah.
because you're shooting the contours.
Yeah.
On bigger sites, but so. Instrument survey, the 785 is funny, because that's set by attorneys.
It is.
We go by
Really?
market,
Yes.
pretty much, we have to do with the market a whole. So they like, say we surveyed this in the 1990s, nothing's changed on it. We're gonna go back and we call redate it.
Yeah.
So they're gonna drive by, look at it, and then they're gonna redate, change the date on it. So bread and butter, like you're making money because you don't have to spend much time on it. But so it's always good to use a surveyor that's there, you can make more money. But if you put it to another surveyor, they're gonna survey the land and they're gonna have $1,000 into it. So like, you lose money on new surveys, but you make money on redates, but you gotta keep the attorney happy. 'Cause you want the attorney to always call you. So it's like it's like a dog eat dog world, so like.
Yeah, I didn't realize the attorney said that.
Yeah, because if you were to say, because it's like, say this is a, 3-acre lot in the city or more urban area. It takes us $1,200 to survey it. We said that the attorney would say, oh, I gotta get the next guy to do it. So if we do it for what we would do with the same price to redate it, so we kind of make money, we lose money.
Yeah.
We just kind of keep the attorneys happy.
And can you say again what a topographic goes over, what?
It goes into elevations, so like the different contours. The reason why is when you're planning a new house, you need to know that information. So if someone's buying land that they're gonna build on, you might as well get the information when the surveyor's out there once. And it also helps us out because then you're looking at it probably before they close, and we can see like, oh, this is a problem. It's one of the things we look at.
It's really important to have a topographic survey because you really need to understand where you can put the septic system on a site. So you don't want poop running into your basement, right? Like that's what I tell people, like, you don't want. That would be a real bad time. So you really need to know those topographic elevations to put the septic system in the right place, to put the well in the right place, and have an appropriate house placement.
And you might as well get it right at the time they buy the property.
Yeah.
Because then the seller pays for it even better.
Yeah.
And then, and not every seller is out there looking at the difference in cost between an instrument survey and a topographic survey. So you might as well get it up front, and then you have it before closing, you're like, oh, that's a problem, or that you or I can look at it and say, yeah, we got problems here.
I will say too, we run into a lot of clients who are like, oh, well, I just bought the property 6 months ago or a year ago, like, can I just use the instrument survey? And it's like, you can't, because you really need the topographic, the elevations if you're gonna build on it. And furthermore, there are some really restrictive towns, like the town of Canandaigua in particular, that requires a topographic survey that's like done within a year. So
that's
yeah.
nuances we can deal with, but costs, like we just talked about, timing. Right now, we can get a survey out 3 weeks, because we're kind of slow on survey side of things, but during the busy season, it could be 4 to 5 week delay. Obviously, attorneys get a priority on real estate transactions because they'll get mad.
What areas do you, like, how far out do you go for?
We'll cover the 5-county region, Ontario, Yates, Wayne, a little bit of Steuben, a little bit of Seneca. I might have missed one there, but we don't, Yeah, we won't go to Monroe County.
Oh,
Well,
Hate it, Livingston's alright, but Monroe County we hate.
why is that? If you don't mind. me asking?
Courthouse in the city of Rochester is, it's a mess, it's a long way for us, because we have to research every deed. Or the deeds surrounding the property before to survey it, so we have to go to the city of Rochester, go into the clerk's office. Usually there's a huge line, usually they don't know where the hell anything is in there, and it's just like, we chewed up 2 days doing that, you know, so.
Just good to know, because knowing that, that then kind of indicates to me that could take longer in other ways, right? Because that's
Well,
all the paperwork that you need to do,
Yeah.
so just thinking,
Monroe
well, you know,
County.
if it's annoying for you, it's probably gonna be annoying for us. Not that we wouldn't accept it, but just good for us to know.
Yeah, and Monroe County surveys, usually they get a few more bucks, they usually have $1,500.
Cause
per
they know
survey.
you've been waiting around and wasting your time, yeah.
Yeah, they're usually a little bit more efficient than us at it, so we just let them have it. So,
And by that, you mean people who are working out of Rochester area.
yeah, BME, Casserole, Fisher. Site plans, this is kind of like the next step you get into is like if you buy, you wanna build. Or you, even need to replace your septic, the next step is for us to build a plan together, for your project. They're important, probably not before you close, but just after you close, so you guys probably don't care about them, but to make sure everything fits. A lot of times we'll do like a concept plan, like a concept site plan before you close, to make sure that the house they want is fits on there, the leach field fits. Because we won't know until you spatially put it on there and figure out what it's gonna look like, if the property's gonna be big enough, or if it's gonna work for what you wanna do. For instance, the Bristol property, we sent them back, said, maybe you wanna reconsider your architectural plans. Because they don't quite fit with the site, I mean, the site was like we talked about when we closed, it's buildable, it's got a perk rate, it's got a depot. Everything looks good, but then they came back with this house that's about 100 feet long. Every kind of like a linear house, it's like. This lot's too narrow.
is
So,
that for Mike?
Kim Edwards. Edwards.
Oh, yeah, that's
It's
the one I
really
asked
weird,
about.
like really
Yeah.
kind of a narrow site, kind of steep. It's a beautiful site, but the house is way too long. The house that they wanted was way too long for the site. So we kind of said, go back to your architect and reconfigure the house because it's not gonna fit the site in any way. So that's what they're doing now.
Thanks.
They already bought the architectural plans. I think they're gonna spend another $15,000 on a new set of architectural plans, but.
So they should have researched, or maybe had a conversation with you prior
Yes,
to working with
yeah,
them.
they kind of like, they sent over the plans that this is the house we want, so.
Can we go back quickly to the site plans and why they're important?
Oh,
Yeah, I think a lot of times people don't realize that it's a requirement of the town that they're building in, so everything like, an engineered site plan is not an architectural plan. We do not stamp architectural plans, the site plans that we do are really focused on making sure that the topography is right, that the locations of the utilities and the well and the septic and the house and all of that is good and kosher and it's gonna work. We work with architects all the time, we work with like Key Homes and modular home companies all the time too, and we coordinate with them. But we do not do anything except design, so, like, some people get confused sometimes too, like, oh, like, thanks for doing my septic plan, when will you be out to install it? We do not install septic plan, we do not install septic systems, we do not excavate properties. So it's really important that people understand that the site plans are typically required by the town. And going back to, again, like, you may spend 10 grand on a site plan, it's going to save you in the long run because your excavation contractor is going to have a blueprint that they can go off of.
yeah, and
it's
that, it's even that, you could take it to 2 or 3 excavation companies, you get the same price and the same plan, so you know if one's screwing you or not.
Yeah,
So it does help, even town aside, it's gonna help you with coordinating your contractor, well, picking your contractor or builder, so it's a really good thing to have. Planning your utilities, we've recently, I've seen someone, well, this is a project we did a septic system for, obviously built this huge pole barn, built it right on top of the septic system. And it's working somehow, I'm crossing my fingers, but like, he didn't even know it, he still just put this huge pole barn, but I'm like, that's part of the site plan, is like, you know where things are, and you know where you can put things, you know, so don't screw yourself either.
So site plan before,
Building.
or before building. before
Yeah,
architecture,
we usually
before-
kind of come in like just before the architect. Cause I kind of give them like an envelope, this is what you can build in. And then the architect's usually there with us, and then we have good architects we work with, so I can give some recommendations there. As far as actually property value and market value, this is a fun one, Macedon, I was talking to the assessor, she says, we assess raw land at $6,000 an acre. We assess building lots at about $30,000 to $40,000 a lot, right? So if you had a 2 acre or 3 acre lot, the assessed value is gonna be $18,000 at $6,000 an acre, right? But a building lot's 40, so they're great, look at the market value right there. So if you have a site plan, you can prove it's a buildable lot. Your price just went from $18,000 to 40, and that's assessed value. We know that's market is way over that. So like you might, if you're gonna sell it, you might as well get a site plan on it, so that it's gonna be a buildable lot. So and a lot of times, smart people will want to see that before they buy, because they don't want to buy a dead lot, right? Lot that just put the camper on. They don't want to just buy that. They want to make sure they can build their house on it. So the site plan is actually a good idea. If you know someone that wants to sell, say, hey, maybe you want to get a site plan so you can double your market value.
And I'm sorry, I know you mentioned this, I'm waiting for my coffee to hit in. How much did you say a site plan typically runs?
Per lot, good question, per lot, we're just site, no septic, we're looking at about 2,500 plus your survey aspects of it, but, so, alright. All inclusive, septic system lot, you're probably looking at $6,000 to $7,000.
I would say yes, but if
We're a
you go,
lot, but there's caveats, I'll give you a price on it.
yeah, so anything that's by a lake is gonna be way more expensive, like plan 10 to 12 grand.
Yeah,
Because there's just a lot more to it, there's
Totally.
watershed, there's landscape architecture requirements by a lot of the lakes.
so if I'm talking like a rural 2 acre lot right across the street here, $6,000 to $7,000.
Yep,
And would you, if we contacted you and said, hey, we have this area, we're looking at blah, blah, could you give like a quote on
Oh,
what that?
absolutely do,
Do you do
yes.
that all day? Okay.
All day long.
Cool.
yep, and also, we also do feasibility studies too, so if you have a buyer who's like, wants to put this really expensive
Yeah,
house on
those
the
would come in
property.
place like commercial, like $1 million homes, so like.
Yeah,
We should do a study like to make sure that's actually gonna work for them before they do it.
Do you guys like doing site plans? Like, is that like a good thing?
That's what we do, yeah. That's
Yeah,
a good-
okay. So.
Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't like it.
So here's my experience, so I had a client who bought land,
Uh-huh.
well, he still hasn't closed on it yet, but he's there. And the cool thing is that he was very on the fence about raw land, he's like, I want, it worked out beautifully because Brennan's company already had done the site plan for the previous owner. So it made for my client walking into this transaction way more comfortable and more willing to pay what they were asking, because he knew exactly what he was buying. He knew where he was gonna be able to put a house, he knew what he was getting into, he knew everything. So he was able to really look at it, so that right there, there's so much value in seeing a site plan.
I feel like you guys should look at land that's been on the market for a long time and hasn't sold and offer to do a site plan for them. Not free, but like you guys could it's like shooting fish in a barrel, right? Because if that's a way for sellers to increase their value and it's more marketable and more attractive for buyers.
I agree,
Like
we
I'm
would have to
thinking.
probably bring a couple more engineers on staff to do that, but yes.
Your business, I'm sorry.
I agree, no, we have no problem finding work on the engineering side of things, but if we were, that's exactly.
So you missed what he said in the beginning, which was my problem, is I don't do more advertising for my business either, because you're already so busy.
Already on board.
It's not that you
Well, that's, but if you guys have a client, you say
We
like,
need leverage.
why don't you jump the price up a little bit?
don't-
Because builders love that, Gerber, Pinnacle, even Key will do it sometimes, the other builders you got around here. Even Steve Mancini, all those guys. If they got a buyer that wants a house, they'll find a land, but if it's not an approved building lot, they're gonna say screw it. But if it's an approved building lot, like Mount Morrison's property on 41 that did Mancini just bought both of them. They know that they can come in and start digging a foundation
It
wall.
gets approved by one of those.
Yeah, they dig a foundation the
Okay.
first week, so like, because a lot of times builders will hold the note on the property until either the foundation's up or the house is completely done, and then they'll sell it, like, that's where you guys make great one, because you sell a finished house.
Yeah.
The So that they don't wanna hold that note for next 3 or 4 months to get approvals, right? It's just interest they gotta pay, so. Yeah, so if we got a buildable lot. Yeah, you
Well,
like
I
these,
get clients who will not look at land that's not buildable.
yeah.
They wanna know what they're buying ahead of time.
A lot of attorneys will stop a project. Or they may encourage to stop the project until it's not a buildable lot. Because they're like, you're gonna buy this lot, and a good attorney, should I say, some will just, whatever. Timing and contingencies, I just wanna just kind of go over some things. We talked about soil testing. I can usually get out there in 2 weeks. To do soil testing, engineering, single family site plan, 1 to 2 months, pretty straightforward.
That's just in design, and also we sometimes have a backlog. That ranges
Yes.
anywhere between 12 to 16 weeks, meaning the day you sign the proposal, it's going to be 3 months before we can even touch it.
Right.
We're currently at like 4 to 6 weeks at the moment,
About a month,
so,
so
yeah.
it takes us about a month or 2 to get it when we start on it. Depending on the backlog, but that changes every day. Commercial site plans are usually more, they're usually 4 to 6 months from the time we start on it. The subdivisions are really easy to do. I mean, this is all just for the plans. I'll talk about our approvals down here. That kind of goes on top. Septic systems usually, like, so we do it in a month or 2.
I just wanna make a quick note too, any failing system or replacement system
We put it to
is,
the top.
we put it to the top, so if there's like a property that. There's like sewage backing up, like that immediately goes to the top of our list, because that's obviously a big issue.
Yeah. So those are like our design pieces. And then after we get completed our design, we go into approvals and permits. Now, there's 2 types of approvals and permits. There's discretionary and there's non-discretionary. Discretionary means that anyone can say no, right? You could be like that with a discretionary approval. There's non-discretionary means it's a permit or approval that it has to be given by right. So they can't say no, they can just put a bunch of conditions on it and they can make you wait till you get your permit. So non-discretionary means they have to give you the permit or approval as long as you meet the criteria and can meet the criteria. Discretionary is like your planning boards or your zoning boards, like you want for a variance. They can easily say, no, you don't get the variance, or the planning board. Planning board could fall in the non-discretionary if it's a permitted use. But they could also make your life hell to make it say like, you don't want to do the project, you're done, so.
A really good example of a variance would be, like somebody who wants to do a tear down rebuild on the lake. And they want their building to be a certain height, and you may have to get a variance, and they probably are not gonna grant that, so.
Most of the properties in the lakes were usually, I would say 80% of them, we need 3 or 4 variances. Every property on the lake, doesn't matter the town. It's a thing that happens, because if you're gonna do a tear down rebuild, should I say? Because most of them are non-complying as it is, so we have to do permit variances to get it, a new structure on it, and they have to permit those because, I should say they don't have to, but and generally they permit them because there's an existing structure. If you had a 50-foot wide or 20-foot wide lake lot that had nothing on it, forget it. You're not getting anything on it, so, because the zoning codes are so hard to meet that they wrote on all these properties. That none of the properties fall into the zoning, but they don't work with the zoning code, but they do it so that people buy the lot next to it, combine them together and make a bigger lot, so that they get these cottages out. And they get the bigger houses in. It's a terrible way to do it, but only the rich can afford land. So, the variances are big on the lake. You could figure 3 to 6 months for a variance, depending on the number of meetings you go to. I've had some that take a year. Planning board approvals take about 3 to 6 months.
So some towns are easier than others, so anytime you have somebody who wants to buy raw land in the town of Canandaigua. The town of Canandaigua is notoriously difficult to work with, and it will take 3 to 6 months to get an approval just to build a typical single family residence in the town of Canandaigua, so.
What, are there other areas that are particularly difficult that would be good for us to know?
The town of Gorham, which is interesting,
No.
because it's not hard, but it is gonna take time, I would say, from what I've
So-
seen.
Yeah, Canandaigua was probably the most difficult process to get through just in general.
The town, not the
On the
state.
town, yeah, if you're on a lake lot in the town, you could go even longer. Town of Gorham lake lots are difficult,
Yeah.
town of Gorham land lots, like away from the lake, usually are pretty straightforward, so,
Just good to know.
town of Middlesex is weird. They just don't know what's going on half the time, that's the problem with towns, they don't know what's going on. So you spend time trying to get to where you gotta go, but.
Yeah, if you go in Bristol and those types of areas, you're gonna run into steep slopes, so that can add some time if you're.
The
trying to
steep
build.
slopes really gives us like, a few adds like 3 months to it, steep slopes.
Wow.
They're just, but. Non-discretionary is like your Department of Health areas.
That's where she lives, yeah.
Middlesex,
That's right, no, Bristol, that's where I grew up, that's.
town of Bristol, town of South Bristol is awesome, town of Bristol. Town of Bristol's terrible.
South Bristol, I was South Bristol.
South Bristol is great. Naples, great. Naples is kind of weird, I don't know, Lou in there, he's kind of, I don't know if he knows what he's doing yet. Oh, actually, no, it's Chris now and Lou. Chris will. Yeah. Anyways, non-discretionary permits are like the ones that you have to get as long they're guaranteed to get to you. They just with conditions or not. Is am I over my time?
You're good. I mean, you're good on our end.
I'm over my time.
So we're gonna have you.
Okay,
Yeah, for real, like, this is really good.
Department of Health, they have to give you a permit, so it's gonna take 6 to 12 months to get the permit, but they have to get it as long as you meet the requirements. So, DEC's they have to give you a permit, DOT, they have to give you an interest on the property, onto your property. If you only front on the DOT, so it's just gonna take time to get there. I don't know, construction timing, I mean, you probably wanna know how long it takes to build a single family house. 7 to 12 months. So,
So if you know somebody who is interested in building next year, get them a site plan this year. Because then you can start going through the approval processes in the slow months, like in, November, December, January, February, and then once we hit March, April, everybody and their brother is looking for a site plan to build in the summer. So the time, if you would know somebody
well,
who
it
wants
takes
to
12
build.
to 15 months to get it
Yeah.
from the beginning to the time you move in. It's
Yeah.
How long do those site plans usually last for?
Well, if I do it mostly indefinitely, because I'll keep signing them,
Okay,
but if the code changes. The zoning code or some reason the state code changes, well, it usually does, but. So if the code changes, then the site plan has to be revisited, as long as there's no code change that affects the property, I'll just keep signing them
okay.
until they build, or if it transfers property, usually I'll go back and ask them for money to re-sign it again.
If you have major code changes, what does that entail when it comes to, I mean, I guess it's probably based on whatever the changes are, but.
Yeah, this will be basically what the code changes are, usually there's usually not huge local zoning code changes from what they were. State code usually doesn't affect us too much, it's gonna affect you guys, state code on the residential side of things next year. Because it's almost 100% guaranteed that they're gonna require sprinklers in houses.
Really?
Yes, they've been arguing about it, but they've been trying to push it for the last 10 years. And this is like the year everyone says, yeah, we're doing sprinklers next year, now,
Right?
existing houses. will.
Existing.
Yeah, but then what if you put something in the.
So
Sector.
a big difference between,
Better shots.
right?
Oh, God.
So the sprinklers are different in residential than they are in commercial,
Oh, okay.
which there's no sprinklers in this building, but that's for other reasons, but. Residential, you require one head in each bedroom, that's it.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
usually classified as not the big steel pipes you see in commercial buildings.
I got you.
So it's a lot easier, and most plumbers can do it.
That makes sense, that really worried me for a minute.
But yeah, you're gonna,
How cool are we gonna sound? We can tell our clients that are building homes, by the way, next year, it's gonna be a requirement. I mean,
it's almost written, it's almost set in stone.
I like the idea of having fun, I'm not lying.
Safe, right?
Yeah.
I'll probably be out of the house before it goes off.
Right? I love that too.
Commercial site development, I have no clue, it varies a lot. Subdivision streets, the reason they put that up there is, subdivision street, you're probably 2 weeks before you're laying out a new subdivision cul-de-sac. It's just the approvals from the time you start to the time you
2
actually,
weeks or
2 years,
2 years.
sorry. 2 years from the time you start to the time you actually start putting in the street, you're looking at a year and a half to 2. Those are big developer things, most developers, they. Like a Morale or someone comes in, they should know all this stuff, you should be the one educating them.
How big does a subdivision have to be classified as a subdivision?
Oh, good question. There's major and minor, so minor is under 4 lots, major is over 4 lots. Those are the 2 classifications they have. Usually major. They said 5 lots at major because at that point you're like economics mean you're almost starting to put roads in. But nowadays it's so expensive to put roads in, usually it's more like 10 lots. If you want 10 lots, you're putting in a road.
Is it still gonna be 2 years, no matter what the size, like if it's 4 and under, like? Let's say it's a three parcel,
No, so that's a good question. Minor subdivisions, like usually get those done in 4 to 6 months. Those are really straightforward. But if it involves a subdivision street, 2 years.
Okay.
Because if you're putting in streets, usually means you're extending utilities. Extending utilities, you've got to go to the health department, you got to go to DEC to extend those utilities. Now, if you're doing a subdivision street without extending utilities, it's probably less, but.
makes sense.
There's kind of like a dead zone in subdivisions, like, 5 to 8 lots are really common. You get to like 10 to 15, 20 lots, the economics don't work to actually start putting in roads. So you gotta get to like that 20 to 30 range to actually start paving roads, so like 10 to 15 lots usually don't do. It's like kind of like everyone stays under 8 or over 15, 20. Depends on the area, obviously, because construction costs for a street, I think it's right now it's around $650 per linear foot of street you put in. So you can do the math on that. If you have a 100-foot long street, you're looking at $600,000. No, 650 times 100, whatever that is. Yeah.
Question my job choice.
Well, putting in roads is really, really expensive. The general development costs, we've already talked about engineering costs, subdivision costs, septic design. Commercial development. It's usually like 60 grand an acre to do the earthwork, but then it's everything on top of that. Residential is, key homes is probably, they're still touting like $190 a square foot, but most custom homes are $250 to $300 a square foot to build new houses. That adds up really quick. Maybe talk about this cost of construction street. I think that's all I got. Questions and comments?
When do we get you back?
There's a lot to cover.
That's what I mean, it's fascinating.
I am more than open to, I happens all the time, it's like realtors, you can pick up the phone and call me like, what do you think about this property? If I don't get to it that day, I'll call you back and like check it out on whatever I can find online and say, yeah, that's good, yeah, it's kind of iffy, you probably wanna, slow down the building, the closing on it so that we have more time to work on it. And that, a lot of times most time I advise everyone to put a development contingency in their contract. That they get permission, that they get a development, the approvals to do whatever development it is, whether it's building a single family house or subdivision or whatever. Usually just put development approvals from the town of whatever, Victor or whatever. It's a good idea to put in there if you can do it. A lot of times the seller wants to give you 90 days. It's usually not enough to get your approvals, but it's enough to give you a good understanding of what kind of hoops you're gonna have to jump through to get there.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
With respect to the topographic surveys, do you ever come across where you do not have to put in a septic or a well and you connect to commercial?
To municipal or commercial?
Municipal.
Yeah, we do a lot of those site plans.
Okay, so would it still be best practice to have that topographic even still? Just for the housing structure? Or is
Yeah,
it
yes,
not as important?
I would say yes. A lot of times, walkout basements depend on your topography. So if you can do a walkout or not, sometimes we've had places where we've had to pump up the sewers. So that the gravity, you can't get drainage to the sewer, so you end up having to put a pump in, you wanna know that ahead of time.
Gotcha.
And
But we certainly do site plans that connect to municipal water and sewer.
Yeah.
And we would do the sanitary connections and the water connections on the drawings and that would be.
Those are
included in the
usually-
site.
Doing those site plans are usually better than the 6 or 7,000. Sometimes 6 or 7,000 with the septic and everything included. But if you can kind of start shaving that down by, $1,500 or so. So you're looking like $5,500, 5,000 for a site plan without, that includes survey, site plan without septic.
And it's all staying on the same side of the road, not going underneath, correct?
You can go underneath.
Well, I know you can, but isn't the price increased quite significantly with the
Uh,
DOT?
DOT or municipal streets, no, not really, residential. I should say, residential water, the town usually does it for a quoted amount, usually it's about $2,000, $2,000 to $3,000. They'll push underneath the road for that, the water department usually does that, brings it to your road line. Sewer, that one goes either way, depends on the department, it can get expensive to bore under for sewer, yeah.
So I know that I had an issue with, I wanted to connect to public sewer and you had to go under the road and you had to get approval from the DOT, the town, there was like all of this rigmarole and the price was like triple. Because you had to bore underneath the road and then turn and go down and in order to connect, and so obviously, but my client was like, no, I'm just gonna keep with the septic system, and it's fine.
So that's a good one, actually, likely you were out of district, you were out of sewer district 2 at that point, so you were on, they were on septic, so that did not include any kind of sewer district. So it would never have hookups, never had means of supplying, so you're actually going out of district to connect, you're an out of district user, they allow them, but, they didn't have the sewer line wasn't right in front of the property. If the sewer line goes in front of your property and the property is there, they have to put a stub out.
So this is, I know you're not familiar with Monroe County, but this is an area where like, there's a road called 250 and from, here going towards, east, it would be going east from 250, there has never been any, sewers at all. And then in the town and the other, suburban areas, obviously there was, so you're gonna find pockets of people that had septic and not, were connected, and it's because it was never available, so the people that wanted to connect, it ended up being like literally 20 grand to connect, because it was a big deal,
Yeah. So, we actually just ran into one, in Canada, where just like that, just finished up the approvals on it, it was like 100 feet down the road was a sewer, they want to connect to it. And I actually looked up the tax information, it showed it was in the sewer district, so they're paying sewer taxes. And they didn't have means to connect with it, I said, well, if I was you, I'd go to an attorney and sue the crap out of the sewer company, because they have to provide means for you to hook
where
up.
do you find if it's in a sewer
It's
district?
on the tax map, or in the text, just the description of the property. So if it was actually in district, the property description says it's in sewer district. It means that sewer department has to
It
provide
has to provide
means
to it.
of of connecting to it at the right of way,
Gotcha.
but, some
I
people.
didn't realize that, that's.
But a lot of it's probably was out of district, I would guess.
I'm assuming so.
Yeah, so that they'll change the district lines around for you if you ask to hook up, but. It's, taxes go up too when you get out of district, so. Yeah, there's a lot of things like that they don't do, municipalities, you have to keep them in check, because they could be charging you for, water and sewer, like your property has water and sewer to it.
Yeah.
For taxes, but you don't have means to hook up, and then at that point, it's their problem.
It's common knowledge for people to know, like to look and see if it's in that district, and if it is, then they have to provide it. I don't think I've actually ever heard.
Yeah, provide means to connect.
Where I'm located, I'm still septic, but I know there's sewer all around me.
But then they should have had a lateral that came to you right away that you could have tied it to.
Oh, we got a project.
Yeah, I was let me send you my address,
Yeah, but you gotta pin them down too, and they're gonna be really slippery.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, sometimes I hate being on septic.
Yeah. Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm on septic.
I know, it's not that it's an inconvenience, but it's an inconvenience, how nice it would be just to be like.
They're
Not
very-
worry about it.
Not worry about it.
A lot of times it's nice, you know, so you can like put up a pool if you got a small lot, you don't worry about stuff system in the way. But, and to her, defense though, you don't have to pay the higher taxes because you're on septic.
Yeah, good point.
Here's another question. Let's say you had a septic and you tap into sewer. What happens, because a lot of them have distribution boxes. What happens with all of that underground
Stays.
gas?
Stays,
Yeah,
keep this forgotten about.
okay.
But that's why it's important, and it's why in these protected watersheds, one of the additional steps you have to go through. In addition to the inspector being on site for the soil testing, you actually have to send it in to them for approval and review, and they actually document. So like all the septic systems in the watershed
We have
and
record.
lake, we have record of, so if anybody wanted to.
Right, like what if you wanted to put an addition on or
Yeah.
a pool or something? and-
Yeah.
If you're gonna go into, it, you probably have to remove it.
Yeah,
If you're gonna do an addition, stuff like that, you probably have to remove it anyways, through the foundations, but. Pools, no, pools go over top of them all the time, new working septic systems, I see pools on top of them all the time. There's a code actually that states that you can't do, your pool can't be within 35 feet of the septic. But no one ever follows it.
But don't you have to have it approved by the town in order to put a pool on your property?
Code enforcement officers don't look into it, most of them don't.
But that's what I thought.
Also, just a fun fact to throw out, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the average life of the septic system of a conventional septic system is 35 years.
30 years,
Oh, is
but
that right?
Yes.
30 years, if you get over that, you're on,
well,
Or
it's
over time.
fast, rusty, right, and all that
yeah, it's just,
corrosion.
mostly organic buildup, actually.
Mhm.
They just.
What he means is poop building.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if I wanna know exactly what that means.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that there was like, I just sold a house that had septic and it had, like holes within the certain piping and the cap needed to be replaced
Yeah,
because it
it's
was
not
all.
box.
But what does it cost if, let's, like, use my house, I've got a brand new leach field, well, I think it's brand new because it's about 10 years old, 11 years old at this point, right?
Right.
My distribution box though, what is it gonna, like, let's say, if I just have to have a distribution box replaced, what does that cost?
Those are usually about, let's see, the box itself about $500, so you're probably looking about 1,500, $2,000 to replace that.
Could I get it
Yes.
relocated if I wanted to?
No, it's usually it's or D box is like the lines, the field is like literally part of it, it's
Okay.
one unit, and you can't, if you're gonna do the whole bed, that's the whole thing, $15,000, so.
Okay,
Wait, so septic systems are only supposed to last like 30 years?
I thought it was like 60.
I thought it was like 100, I was like, oh, we got forever.
Yeah, I wasn't about all of them, I'm like, oh my gosh, this
I've got
septic is
them.
50 years old.
You're going.
You're so good.
We've seen them, 50, 60 years old, that's not a problem, but, actually more, actually you get back into the 50s and 60s and those are steel tanks. So usually those are toast. And when the steel tank era there was really no leach field. So
Sure,
you
yeah.
see a steel tank, and my dad tells me stories about it, because he put in septic systems all like. So there's been times that they buried a whole Volkswagen in the ground, something pipe into the side of it. That was their septic
So
system.
what's the best type of distribution box, like, what's the material?
Concrete actually, but the concrete nowadays sucks, so polyethylene is actually turning to be better, because concrete. They've turned the plants so cheap that they put a lot of additives that. In lesser of the Portland, this is really technical, but they deteriorate fast. They break down really fast.
So do you have people that?
Poly is actually starting to, plastic tanks and plastic D-box are actually starting to come over the septic tanks.
He has really good relationships with distributors of particular septic tanks that he
That's
works with.
That was what I was gonna ask you, like, if
Yeah.
I bring you, some, let's say Mike, right, that I said, Mike, if he decides he's gonna build, this is,
Yeah.
he usually, you'll help him
Oh, yeah,
set up who the best people
They,
are.
and they spec it out, so in the septic system design, what that's showing is like specs for certain things
Yeah,
and
we-
certain sizes.
we're still speccing for the most part concrete septic tanks. But poly is really coming to overcome that, but concrete is still stronger than polyethylene. So concrete, there's been a lot of them that have been driven over, they're not supposed to be, but a lot of times they get driven over and they don't usually have a problem, but. Polyethylene has come a long ways. So,
When you get your tank pumped, are there indicators then if the system is not doing well?
yeah, the baffles are huge.
What's
Yeah,
that?
those are, I don't have a picture of it, but.
Oh, that's what had to be replaced.
Yeah, so there's an inlet and there's an outlet, that's something, but you got a big tank, but when it comes in, there's usually a T or there's a wall that pushes the wastewater down.
Okay.
And then it comes across, and then it comes out, but in order to come out, it has to go underneath this wall and then out. So those are a baffle, because the scum is gonna be at the top. And then you're gonna have your solids at the bottom, you want that wastewater in the middle, that's gonna be cleaner.
Okay,
If you lose your baffle on your, especially your outlet baffle, someone goes right through, you got 5 years, your system's toast. Brand new system that didn't have baffle on it, 5 years, you're gonna be toast.
wow.
Yeah,
So they can, when they pump, they can,
but you can see the
How-
baffles are in there, yeah, and if they're not in there, you're gonna be in trouble really quick. A lot of times we're putting filters on the outlet for these things, really technical, but there's a, instead of a baffle, we're actually putting these filters in it. That filters the water that goes out, so
Does that
that's, it's better, yeah, more, it's more of a nuisance because the filter will plug. And then, you got, my system's backing up, it's failing, but actually it's your filter plugging, so it's actually stopped all this junk from going into the leach field.
which
So I
overall
want
is a
you-
good thing, but
It's a,
temporary problem
yeah, it's a beneficial nuisance, right? Whatever
too.
they
Right,
call it,
right,
so,
right.
um,
We need to get our septic pumped at the house, I think.
3 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years you need to do it. It's fun with everybody, I've come up with, me. When's the last time your system pumped? Never, how long in the house, 20 years.
Oh, so what's the problem with it?
You get scum build up, the sludge build up, to the point where every time water goes out, it's picking up a little bit of those solids, taking them out with it,
Feature your yard,
and especially you
where
don't.
your animals and kids play. maybe?
No, it's going out into your leach field, and those leach fields can't take all that work, they can't. There's valve that makes valve, so,
You'll see like standing water,
yeah, or
gross
back up,
water.
yeah, please,
whole area.
I just thought it was because it rained a lot.
hopefully that's what it is, and it could be that,
Okay, wait, I have to get.
3 to 5 years, is it just 2 years, or whole family, or?
Well, I actually live at my parents' house, it's just the two of us at this
Yeah.
point, so.
That's usually.
It's a I was told it's a huge tank, so it should be fine.
A lot of times, yeah, two of you can get along for 5 or 10 years, but. A full family like our family, yeah, 3 to 5 years, or 3 years, you're probably toast, you're deep wall on it.
Got it, good to know. This has been so good. I'm Kim, by the way.
Hi, Tim,
Hi.
I'm Brennan.
Yeah, we texted.
Oh,
I was on the text with Emily
oh,
to
alright,
get you scheduled.
oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. No, that's good.
You said, can you talk about your wine truck for a minute though, please?
What?
I was like, I just got this idea.
Very believe.
I know.
That's what I wanted class on.
Mobile wine bar, like it's got 4 tap wines and it's got a wine.
You brought that?
Coffee is.
Wednesday, 18th.
Oh my god, yeah, tell me, I wanna know more about this than you possibly know. I wanna know everything, how long have you had this, was it hard to get started?
Yes,
It's hard,
it was, yeah, I mean, it's hard to get a liquor license in New York State, and
yeah,
I had to say that I am an off-premise caterer, which I am.
right,
But I prefer not to do the catering and to hire out catering, like via a concessionaires agreement. But if I'm doing a special event, it's pretty simple. You do have to get the permit in like 2 weeks ahead of time,
okay,
and with New York State, but then, yeah, I can sell beer, wine, cider.
No, you just say the answer, seeing it out.
I have not even got my Instagram up and going yet. Yep, I know.
how can I help you? How can I help you? I love this.
That is social media. It's on my to-do list. It's been a long run, mainly because I have 3 little kids, and so.
I wanna help you.
Yeah, it's called the Vino Ballet. Yeah.
I know, right?
I know.
Get all of this.
I know, and
That's
it's-
right. I just started drinking.
You guys would get somebody's wine from here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Stephanie at the Vino Ballet FLX.com. Yeah. So that's my email address, Stephanie@thevinovale.com.
Stephanie